Hello and welcome back to Always Ours, Chapter 10, Consequences, Part 2. Summary: Izuku and Raphael start their internship. Aizawa starts his own project. And Nezu gets called out for his decision. Not that it will change his mind. Izuku had always been mad. From the time the doctor told him, "No, you'll never get a quirk," to when his best friend left starburst scars on his skin for the first time, to when his father walked out shortly after his diagnosis. But watching his mother's face crumble, tears falling faster after he'd ripped up his father's pictures in fury, hearing her whisper, "You're just like him," had taught him one crucial lesson. Anger was for other people, never him. He'd pushed that feeling deep down with all the rest of his negative emotions, buried so deep he'd almost forgotten they'd existed. But something had happened during the sports festival, something he could barely remember. When he'd strained to recall, he thought that he'd faced Hitoshi Shinso, who'd riled him up with comments about how blessed Izuku was, how he'd never faced real adversity, how Shinso would take his Hero Corps spot. But that felt wrong somehow, like remembering a dream that shifted when you tried to focus on it. At least someone had decided to send him an internship request. He hadn't expected much, especially with this random mutation of All Might's quirk. Good thing he'd managed to pass it off as an extension of his stockpile ability. Now he stood facing Hamato Raphael from Class 1B and Kamui Woods, a hero who already thought he was a lost cause after the Bakugo rescue incident. Sometimes, privately, Izuku wondered what would have happened if he hadn't rushed in that day, if he'd left Bakugo to deal with it himself, like the explosive boy had always demanded. Would he have found another way to become a hero? One that didn't involve constantly breaking his bones or mysterious black tendrils? He'd never know, but he'd face this challenge like every other, one step at a time. "All right, you two," Kamui Woods said, settling behind his desk. "I don't usually take interns, let alone two at once, so I'm not sure what to do about this. Let's start with introductions, hero names and quirks." "Nightwatcher," Raphael answered immediately, though he looked confused, as if he didn't know why he'd said that. "My quirk is Turtle. Pretty boring. Just a shell and green skin. Not too much else to it." Izuku nearly choked. Those were almost the exact words that Leonardo had used to introduce himself to Splinter Sensei. He had a theory that the Hamato boys were related. Their quirks were too similar for coincidence, but he learned his lesson about asking invasive questions. "Takeru," Izuku managed. "My quirk is superpower. I can draw from a stockpile of energy that increases my speed and strength, and I get this green lightning." He demonstrated briefly, wincing as the power crackled throughout his body. "But as you saw at the sports festival, I don't have much control over it." "Yes, I noticed you had trouble, but not exactly why." "I was really angry, and those tendrils just came out." Izuku showed the black tendrils still wrapped around his wrists like loving bracelets. "I can't control them at all, and even my stockpile quirk doesn't work well. It still breaks my bones." Raphael studied him with surprise and understanding. "That's rough, man. I don't know much about stockpile quirks, but I do know about anger." His accent thickened slightly unconsciously. "Have you thought about treating each quirk separate, like the stockpile one? Maybe turning the power down? And for the other one, maybe someone I care about once told me that Anger is like fire. If you stoke it, it'll burn you and everyone around you. So, instead of stoking it, maybe you just feel it for a bit. But don't let it overwhelm you. Well said, Night Watcher. Kamui Woods nodded approvingly. Izuku, my quirk requires constant control. If I let the branches grow wild, they do whatever they want. You can't let your branches grow wild either. He paused, his expression growing serious. Takeru, I should apologize first. I let my branches go wild when I saw you risking your life for that other boy. I took my anger out on you, something a hero should never do. I guess we all have something to learn about anger. Neither he nor Kamui Woods noticed the bright red markings beginning to crawl up Raphael's arms, pulsing like living embers. Aizawa Shota was many things. Perpetually tired, one of the top underground heroes, and he could admit, a terrible friend. Then again, he'd never really had friends before. Growing up being told his quirk would only make him a villain, passed from foster home to foster home until Netsu took him in at 16, he'd never understood friendship, or feelings really. All feelings did was make you vulnerable, and vulnerability meant pain. But when he'd heard Hisashi had been attacked by the hero killer, something had shifted inside him. Thanks to Splinter taking over homeroom duties, he actually had time to sleep now. Time to think about his life, or what passed for one. About how he treated the people around him. About how he'd feel if the last thing he remembered saying to Hisashi was, I wanna be alone. After Opero's funeral. About how empty his world would be if something happened to one of the only people who'd ever bothered sticking around. So he'd visited Hisashi in the hospital with a plan. Gather information about the hero killer, then either track the bastard down himself or pass intel to someone who could handle it. Honestly, he was hoping to find Steed first. Maybe after that, he could figure out how to repair whatever friendship he'd been too scared to acknowledge. Tracking down Namuri was easy. She hadn't left the school. Netsu found her supervising a very uncomfortable-looking Mineta who was running laps in the most form-fitting, revealing workout gear that could still be considered appropriate. Wolf whistles and catcalls echoed from the other students in the gym. How's the internship going? Netsu asked. I fear for the boy if he ever goes out like this, Midnight said bluntly. He's still suggesting we have private sessions and that he won't tell anyone. Little pervert. I didn't mean it, Mineta huffed between breaths. It was just a joke. Besides, you should feel honored someone still finds you attractive. Just for that, you earned 20 extra laps, Midnight called out, then turned to Netsu. I figured he might learn how humiliating it is for the girls and women he pervs on by experiencing it himself. Is it working? Hey kid, what have you learned? Being catcalled is humiliating, Mineta whined, red-faced. Well, you seem to have it handled, but honestly, Namuri, I came for something else. I need advice. Midnight stared. You need advice? From me? Netsu explained about the marriage certificate, watching her expression shift from confusion to horror. You did what? She exploded, drawing stares from the students. Apparently, got myself hitched, he said lightly, but the humor felt thinner than he intended. I say this with all the love in my heart, but what the hell, Netsu? You can't just... And you did fix it the second it happened. He paused. That was a fair question, because he had known. The moment he'd seen the paperwork, the inconsistencies, the legal bindings that shouldn't be possible, He'd known something was wrong, known it didn't align with reality as it should function, known he should fix it, undo it, quietly, efficiently, clean. I could have, he admitted. Midnight blinked, thrown off by the lack of immediate pushback. Then why didn't you? Netsu opened his mouth and stopped, because the answer should have been obvious. It was obvious, because it was unethical, because it was coercive, because consent had not been given, because any rational moral person would have corrected the situation immediately. He knew all of that. He understood it, and yet... he started, and then for a fraction of a second, something uncertain flickered across his face. I didn't see the need to act so rashly. Nemuri stared at him. Didn't see the... Netsu, that's not a paperwork error. That's a person. I am aware, he said, a touch sharper than intended. And he was aware. That was the problem, because every logical pathway led to the same conclusion. This is wrong. Fix it. And yet, layered over that, quieter but persistent, was another line of thought. It's already done. He's here. You wanted companionship. This solves that. Netsu's claws tapped once against his arm. I like him, he said finally, more quietly. And I think he could come to like me. Midnight's expression hardened. That doesn't matter if he didn't choose it. I am not incapable of understanding that, Netsu replied, voice tightening. And that was the truth. He understood it perfectly. He just didn't feel the urgency he should. Didn't feel the wrongness as sharply as logic insisted he should. Instead, when he thought of undoing it, of removing the legal tie, of releasing Splinter, there was resistance. Not external, not forced, just a quiet, insistent reluctance, as if something in him had already settled on the outcome. Though it's faster than I would have preferred, why should I wait? The thought came unbidden, and this time he noticed it, tracked it, turned it over. It didn't feel like his usual reasoning. Too convenient, too aligned with instinct, too easy. Midnight's voice cut through. Netsu, look at me. He did. You know this is wrong. Pause. Yes, he admitted. Then fix it. Silence stretched. He could. He still could. Nothing was stopping him. Nothing at all. I'll consider your advice, he said at last. But even as he said it, he knew he wouldn't. Because the part of him that should have already acted had decided not to. And that, more than anything, unsettled him. My internship is not what I expected. I've been stuck doing paperwork for 3 days straight, filing reports, organizing schedules, making coffee, basically everything except actual hero work. I'm being overlooked again, and it's not fair. I didn't rewrite reality just to end up as someone's unpaid secretary. I deserve recognition. I deserve to matter. But what can I write without giving myself away? Everyone thinks the sports festival ended normally, with me placing second and Shinso winning. If I suddenly become the star intern, people might ask questions. I need to be patient, strategic. But patience was never my strong suit. Maybe just a small change. Something to make my mentor notice my potential. Nothing too obvious. And that's the end of that chapter.